message this morning is in the form of a monologue, reflecting on the last gospel reading that we had. I invite you to use your imagination and imagine along with me. Lucius, when I got back, I told you that I didn't want to make a report. And you said that didn't matter because regulations were that you had to have an after-action report. And I said, you're not going to want to hear what I have to say. And you said, I don't care. It's required. So this is my report. This is my after-action report for the events of 5 April 786 after the founding of Rome. Or as our Jewish friends like to say, 16 Nisan, year 3793, Sunday. So Lucius, you're a senator's son, right? Do you even know what this is? Of course, it's a pylon. It's a spear. You know that. But have you ever held one other than on the parade ground? I doubt it. You call it a pylon. When I joined the Legion almost 30 years ago, my training officer told me that this was a Roman truth detector. And he said it was a truth detector because if somebody on the battlefield, or say hanging on a cross, was unconscious or just pretending to be dead, you could find out the truth very quickly by stabbing them with this. And a couple of days ago on Friday, I found out the truth. Because I was with the group, I was leading the group last Friday that executed those 2 thieves and that Jewish teacher from Galilee, Jesus. And we know how strange that was. We know that Jesus died after only being up there a few hours. And of course, that may be because he had already been beaten half to death, but still, the whole point of the cross is that people will last longer. It makes the point better for us. So I went up to Jesus and I used the truth detector. You know why it's a truth detector? Because when you stab someone and you put this up into their chest, if you feel closely enough, you can feel their lungs move. You can feel the heart beating, if it's beating. You can feel it stop, and it stops. And that is exactly what I did. I stuck this into Jesus up under his ribs, and there was nothing. There was no movement from his lungs. There was no beating of his heart. And I knew he was dead. Without a doubt, he was dead. And without a doubt, a couple of hours later, when one of his friends, actually a couple of his friends came and they took his body down from the cross, I watched and he was dead. I watched them struggle with the body. I watched them have to force the arms together because they'd already started to go stiff in death. And they were able to push him enough together to wrap the body in cloth. And I watched as they took the body to a tomb that was nearby in a quarry. And they put the body in the tomb. And they closed the big stone door. And I remember thinking, mission accomplished. He's dead. It was a good day's work. So I took my men and we went back to the barracks, and I reported to you, Lucius, that this Galilean teacher, whatever he was dead. And then we went to have dinner. So imagine my surprise just an hour or so later when you called me back into this very office and you told me that I had to take some men and go guard the tomb. Far and away, it was the stupidest thing I ever heard you say. Guard the tomb. Guard the dead man. You know, you might as well send me to guard the pyramids or to guard a mountain or something. Because both were about as equally lively. You know, you might as well just guard a big slab of rotting meat if you're going to guard something. But when I joined the Legion, I learned when an officer says march, you march. When an officer says guard, you guard. So I gathered my men and I went to the quarry and we set up a guard on the tomb. Went inside first. When we got there, I rolled the stone aside and looked inside to make sure that he was there. Of course he was dead. And when we rolled the stone back, we poured wax on it and I sealed it with my ring, just to make it all nice and official. And then we guarded. 2 men at a time, watching the tomb while the rest of us ate or slept, drank a little bit, because it was boring. And we went through Friday night, and we went through Saturday, and we went through Saturday night, and I went to bed Saturday night thinking, okay, if we get up Sunday morning, maybe somebody will be here to call us back. And then in the pre-dawn, well, actually in the twilight, Sunday morning, I was sound asleep and one of my men woke me up and I was immediately awake and I grabbed my own spear and I said, what's going on? And he had this look on his face of terror. And he couldn't speak. And I asked him again, what's going on? And he just stared at me. And he couldn't speak. And then all of a sudden, I knew something was wrong, besides just looking at that face. I knew there was something wrong because I could feel a vibration in the air. You know how those really deep sounds that kind of pluck at your bones? It was like that, except there wasn't anything I could hear. And that went on for a minute or two, and I got up and I told him, or I started to tell him anyway, to go and get the men. But before that could happen, the ground started to move. The ground shook under our feet. And I immediately thought, earthquake. And I was relieved because then at least I knew what it was. But it just went on and on. I don't know how long it lasted, but I do know that there was another noise off by the tomb, and both this man and I looked at it, and we could see the stone starting to move. He fainted. I wanted to. I hoped I would. But I didn't, and I just stood there staring as the stone kept moving. And then it was all the way off to the side, and I was looking into this total blackness of the tomb when this tiny light appeared. It looked as though one of the stars in the sky was suddenly right down here where it couldn't be. And I was trying to figure out what that was when it all of a sudden started to get brighter and bigger. And in just a moment or two, it was as bright as the sun, and it was filling the whole inside of that tomb. And I couldn't look anymore. I had to do this. Even as I did this, I looked, and this figure started to come out of the tomb. And as bright as it was behind him, I couldn't really see the figure. It was just this black silhouette moving toward me. And then that light started to fade, and I could see the face. It was that Galilean. It was his tomb, so I suppose it shouldn't have been a surprise, but it was that Galilean. The one who was dead. And we were close enough then for me to see his face clearly, and for me to look in his eyes, and his eyes, he just looked at me. And then he sort of smiled. And he said, "It's okay. You didn't know what you were doing." And then he turned and he walked away. And I couldn't even muster up the breath to yell after him. And then he was gone. So he was gone, the tomb was empty. My men were just starting to come to. So there was nothing else to do. We came back to barracks. We came back here, and I came to see you, Lucius, and I said, something happened, but I don't want to tell you what it was. I don't want to make a report. You said I had to. And I said, you're not going to like what I have to say, Lucius. And you said you didn't care. So here's the truth. That Galilean rose from the dead. I don't know how. I don't know why. And I have no idea what it means. That Galilean teacher, Jesus, he rose from the dead and he walked out of that tomb, and now my whole life is changed. I'm done. I'm done being a soldier. I'm done. I'm not being a truth detector anymore. Because I've seen the truth. The truth is that Jesus lives. Now I just have to figure out what that means for me. What it means for the rest of the world. I know it means something. I'm not going to rest until I find out.